Today we asked the question, did sentiment just crash or what just happened? Here's what's coming up, guys. A little bit of a change in the overall market. We're going to talk about a flat inflation reading for the month of August, still no dip in the overall market, and the 10-year not doing anything. Guys, we got a reading on August CPI earlier in this week that showed actual number moving the wrong direction. We had a lower than expected reading on inflation after weeks and weeks of hearing about nothing but higher inflation. What do we think about this?
No, I think, realistically, I think everyone's been expecting that dip, and then thinking that the leading indicators you mentioned was going to be inflation. But the reality is, if you look at the Nasdaq, we've barely even pulled back or reacted to this. And if you want to think about the feeling of why I believe people are getting into fear, I'm going to look at a quick little chart and go away from the futures and into something like an Apple here. When you have a stock like Apple, which is pulled back drastically on the highs after news, you're gonna have a lot of people saying it's breaking the 50-period moving average. It's failed to break through the high of the day. So despite the fact the futures are holding up rather nicely, and the reaction to that lack of inflation, or maybe not a gigantic print in inflation, should be giving us some confidence. You have this pullback in an Apple, which you would think, because they do, has pricing power, it would be somewhat immune and a good place to hide. So the simple fact that a bellwether like this is breaking or holding and breaking the 50-period moving average and is retraced a little bit more than the overall futures could be giving some people those feels of that pullback, which, as you said there in point 2, quite simply has not happened.
Yeah, there has not been a pullback. This has been a record rally. This is the most time we've had without having a pullback here of 5% or more. You have to go all the way back, days and days and days back to March. I believe it's even more than March, but we had a 320 here, pulling back down to 300, which is close enough to, yeah, I mean, that would do it right there. So, back all the way back here. So you have to go back pretty far before we find a 5% pullback. And that's what I want to do. I just want to put the brakes on everything right now because, I mean, sure, inflation's high. We've talked about that, the 10-year, so on and so forth. But the point is that, this is a high of 382, okay? So you'd have to get down to 363 or so to get that 5% pullback. So we have to go all the way back here before we get a pullback. We're nowhere even near that right now. We're talking to like a 1 or 2% pullback right back here to 377. You got a little bit of a pullback back here in May and then what we talked about in March. But the point is that we're on this 50-period moving average. And I want to say, if you are nervous a little bit now about something happening to the market, I think we should retest this back here. It's the September right now. The September effect is a 0.8% or so down move in the S&P 500. So I think that we could get that. I mean, starting in September, we sort of have gotten that. So now we'll wait to see where it pulls back down into. But I'm thinking that what you can do right now is, what's wrong, guys, with just going into cash? Like, if you're nervous right now and you say, you know what, I've rode this all the way up. I mean, let's just zoom back out. If you got involved even back here in April or so of 2020, I mean, that's, obviously some of those lows happening in March, but you go all the way back here of 2020, May of 2020, $214 on the Qs, right? This is the NQs. This is the Nasdaq, all the way up to 380. Nothing wrong with pairing some off, and I've actually done some of that to sit in cash in case we get a pullback back down here to 360, 370, something like that, and then we can pull the trigger on some names like Apple, high quality names as well. So I would wait for a pullback, sit in cash if you're nervous, because you know what you're going to miss? You're going to miss like 2%. So if you sit in cash now and it goes back to all-time highs, you can get back in if the bull case is right. And you could just buy right back in right here. So you'll miss that 2% on the Nasdaq. But to me, I think it's worth it, especially if you're nervous about a pullback.
Love the sentiment. And I'll show you the S&P here, guys. This is the ES futures on a daily chart. Same story as what Sean was just highlighting. There's the number. The current pullback, 2.77% from all-time highs. So still no 5% pullback. One more thing to talk about here. I mentioned this right off the bat. This is a chart of the U.S. 10-year. This is a daily time frame. This is the beginning of August, right? So 2 and change months now. We've done absolutely nothing versus what happened at the beginning of this year when this thing went from 108 all the way up to 176. So we asked the question, has sentiment crashed? Are we a little bit more negative or not?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think crash is the wrong word to use. Sentiment is trying to flip, but this is not the first time it's happened. It's trying to flip, and people have been talking about this for months and months. So sentiment's trying to flip. There is no crash yet. I do not see it confirmed, and there are certainly places to hide. Like Sean said, you can just trim off the top. Look at some of the chip makers. Chip makers have been at the top. I mean, AMAT has been pretty strong. I mean, there's just a lot of places you can take money off the top if you want to go conservative and then just buy right back in the dip. But as we said, the dip hasn't happened because there's been no true 5% correction, which I will say would be a healthy thing.
It's just simple. I mean, look at some of the stocks that you own. I mean, are you feeling the pain in any of the big names? I don't think so. So we'll wait to see where it goes from here. But I think as long as you get some cash here, let it settle down, start buying in October and November.
Interesting times. We will see where we go from here in the overall market. Here's Ms. V.
Hey guys, thank you for sharing this helpful information. Dear viewers, please subscribe to this channel to see more great videos.